Stories presents.
You know, up in the beautiful, serene hills of Uttarakhand, there's a story that is just absolutely chilling. It's about a family that gets completely torn apart, where the line between a horrible tragedy and supernatural terror, well, it gets so thin you can't even see it. So today, we're going to unpack the story of the cursed family of Pari.
Right off the bat, our story kicks off with a real puzzle. How can a family that is deeply, deeply religious and devoted to a deity meant to protect them, suddenly become the target of some kind of evil spirit? What on earth happens when your faith just isn't enough to keep the darkness out?
Very heart of this whole mystery is an 11-year-old girl. Her behavior starts getting weirder and weirder, so erratic and frankly so terrifying that her dad, totally desperate, turns to the local priest for help. And the priest, he just takes one look at her, and he knows. He recognizes this ancient evil that's taken hold of her.
He says just one word, a name that sent absolute shivers down the spines of all the villagers. Masan. But what is a Masan? And why does that one name inspire so much fear?
Okay, so to really get what's going on here, we first have to understand the nature of this thing, this entity that has taken hold of this little girl. What exactly is a Masan, and what could it possibly want?
So, in the local folklore from this area, Pari Gardwal, a Masan isn't just any old ghost. No, it's considered a really powerful, often vengeful spirit that's usually tied to a place of death. And get this, it doesn't just possess someone for no reason. It has a dark purpose, like a mission for justice or revenge. And once it gets a hold of you, it is incredibly difficult to get rid of.
But you know, before all this terror started, things looked perfect. On the surface, this was a happy, ideal family.
So let's talk about them. You've got Gagan, a proud soldier, his wife Madhu, and their two wonderful little girls. Their life was pretty simple, full of love and family. Even when Gagan was away for work, Madhu created this really warm, happy home for her kids. And you gotta understand, faith was everything to them. They were completely devoted to their Kul Devta, which is like a protective family deity. And it was this faith, this very belief, that was supposed to protect them from the exact kind of evil that was now hiding in the shadows.
Then came a decision that, well, it changed everything. Gagan's father was getting older and wasn't well, so he asked him to move back to their ancestral village in Pauri. And they did. They left the busy city life in Delhi behind for the fresh mountain air. But this move, this return to their roots, it would end up awakening something old and very, very bad.
But that perfect village life they were hoping for? Yeah, that pretty quickly turned into a total nightmare. Tragedy was just around the corner, and when it struck with a devastating blow.
First, Gagan's father passed away, which was really tough on the family. But then they got some good news. Madhu was pregnant again, a little bit of hope for the future. Then, one rainy, stormy morning, the absolute unthinkable happened. Both Madhu and Gagan's mother were found dead. Their lives just gone. So the official story, the one everyone was told, was that it was just a terrible, tragic accident. You know, a treacherous mountain path, slick with rain, they must have slipped and fallen. A heartbreaking loss. But was it really that simple?
Because as the grieving villagers were helping to recover the bodies, one small, unsettling detail came to light. A detail that didn't fit the story. A detail that whispered that this was something far more sinister than just an accident.
See, there was this strange wound on Madhu's chest. Now, most of the villagers just brushed it off, saying maybe an animal got to the body. But for Gagan, it was a chilling inconsistency. It just didn't feel right. And that little seed of doubt, it was about to grow into absolute terror. So Gagan, completely devastated, leaves the army to take care of his daughters. But his grief started to twist into something ugly, something like resentment. And it was inside this house, now full of sorrow, that the real horror began. And that's when his 11-year-old daughter, she just starts to change. She starts talking about feeling this crushing weight on her body all the time. She hears whispers at night. She'd just stare at a blank wall for hours. And then it got worse. She started hurting herself, hitting her head over and over again on the kitchen doorstep. And then, Gagan sees it. Something that freezes the blood in his veins. A mark, a wound, starts to appear on his daughter's chest. It was in the exact same place, and it looked identical to the one he saw on his dead wife. He knew right then. This wasn't an illness. This was a message.
Okay, so at this point, Gagan is out of options. He grabs his daughter and runs to the priest. But the villagers start to gather around, sensing something is deeply wrong, their whispers turning into demands for the truth. The walls are closing in, and this family's secrets are about to explode.
But right before the priest can even start the exorcism, something totally unexpected happens. The younger, just a little girl, speaks up. Torn between being terrified of her father and knowing this horrible secret, she reveals a truth that just shatters everything.
And what this little girl says, it just paints this horrifying new picture of her own father. He wasn't a grieving husband. He was a man consumed by greed for land and resentment. He hated that he had daughters. He desperately wanted a son, and that desire had festered into a murderous rage.
So, the priest starts his rites, and suddenly, a voice comes out of the possessed girl, but it's not her voice. It's the voice of Madhu, her murdered mother, speaking from the other side, and she confirms the horrible truth. Gagan's rage over finding out she was pregnant with another girl is what drove him to murder.
And with this chilling, terrifying clarity, Madhu's spirit tells everyone exactly what happened that day. There was a confrontation on the path to the temple. Gagan's own mother tried to defend Madhu, and he pushed his own mother off the cliff to her death. And when Madhu threatened to expose him, he silenced her forever with a knife and threw her body over the edge too.
So just imagine that, a confession from beyond the grave, coming from the mouth of a little girl. The village just erupted. Total shock, total fury. The truth was finally out, and there was absolutely nowhere for Gagan to hide.
Gagan, totally exposed, he just makes a run for it. But in this crazy twist of fate, he ends up running right back to the scene of his crime. And in a moment of what you can only call poetic justice, he slips on that same muddy path and falls at the exact spot where he had killed his wife and his mother. The villagers saw it happen and they grabbed him.
So Gagan finally faces justice for what he did. His daughters were taken in by their uncle, Sushil, and were finally in a safe and loving home. And the older daughter, the one he was possessed, she made a full recovery. With the truth revealed, the Masan, its mission of vengeance now complete, just vanished.
And that leaves us with this one big question, right? Was it really a vengeful spirit reaching out from beyond the grave to get justice? Or was it the power of a traumatized child's mind, a repressed memory that finally broke through in a desperate cry for help? Where the true justice came from in this story? Well, maybe that depends on what you choose to believe.